Because we're going to cross over to speak to Craig Kafura, who is the Assistant Director of Foreign Policy and Public Relations at the Chicago Council. It's a global affairs think tank which describes itself as independent. When it comes to this visit, we heard the issue about the timing and why Nancy Pelosi was determined to go. In terms of the relationship, which are already rather fragile, they're not going swimmingly well between the US and China. How do you think this will impact that relationship?
Well, I think the concern from the Biden administration is fairly well founded, that it is going to provoke a response from Beijing that's not helpful to other priorities that the Biden administration is pursuing. At the same time, it takes two to tango. This is not a fully unprecedented visit. Speaker Gingrich visited back in 1997. Non-administration travel for experts is fairly regular to Taiwan. Even congressional delegations have visited as recently as last year. So it will, at least temporarily, I think, put U.S.-China relations on a bit of a wrong foot, but that doesn't need to be a lasting damage.
OK, you say it's not unprecedented, but China is in a very different position right now. It's much stronger, and also domestically as well. It's got its own issues. The response, we're seeing these military drills. Is there cause for alarm there? Do you think that this could potentially turn into a military crisis?
Well, you are seeing a fairly broad range of responses from Beijing right now. So part of that is military. They've announced live fire exercises in the waters surrounding Taiwan. Some of those exercise zones do overlap into Taiwan's territorial waters. That is not entirely unprecedented, but the number of zones entering their waters is new compared to the 1995-1996 Taiwan Straits crisis. But it's not just limited to a military response. You've also seen cyber attacks launched against Taiwanese government facilities. And you've seen a fairly wide range of economic penalties imposed on Taiwanese exporters, especially food exporters to the mainland. So you are going to see a range of responses continue to come out of Beijing. The question will be, how long do some of those economic penalties last? And what's the reaction from Taiwan?
And when it comes to potential reaction from the US, are we clear on what their stance is? When we talk about the one China policy, would the US, would it come to the defense of Taiwan? Is that clear? Because it seems that diplomatically, the language seems to be quite fudged from the White House.
Well, that is part of the U.S. policy of strategic ambiguity. They are intentionally ambiguous about whether or not they would come to the aid of Taiwan. And what you've seen in the last several years is not only rising congressional support for Taiwan, but also rising public support for Taiwan. In the Council's own polling, we found that support for U.S. defense of Taiwan has been increasing steadily over the last decade, up to a bare majority of 52% in 2021. That said, that was before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And what we've seen from the U.S. government in Ukraine is a wide range of measures short of direct U.S. military involvement. I suspect we might see something similar, but it would depend on the exact nature of the crisis.
So if, and we don't have, Craig, that much time left, but if you do go down that route, in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the US, NATO ally countries supporting Ukraine, the arms being sent to Ukraine, is that something that, when China looks at what is happening there, are they bearing that in mind with their intentions towards Taiwan?
I would certainly hope so. And the U.S. does have a robust policy of providing defensive arms to Taiwan, as provided for under the Taiwan Relations Act. And the Biden administration has been very intentional about the kinds of arms that Taiwan receives, especially in the last few years, based in part on what we've learned from the fighting in Ukraine.
OK, well, Craig Kafura, Assistant Director of Foreign Policy, Public Relations at the Chicago Council, really good to get your perspective. Thank you.